All right, before we move on from Phoenix Raceway, I do want to give us the chance to talk about our overall experience at Phoenix Raceway, and included in that is the Desert Double, the Duel in the Desert, whatever the hell you want to call it. IndyCar. It was all of our first IndyCar Series race. That will kind of be my first question to the boys on this. I personally loved the IndyCar Series race. It was quite enjoyable. Obviously, didn't recognize every paint scheme in the field, but that's just part of the game. But eventually, by the end of the race, I learned who everybody was in the field. I had a decent grasp of most of the drivers in the field, but it took me a little bit to figure out exactly who each of the drivers were. But just how much grip they're able to have around that small track, and it being a flatter track as well, and them zipping around that track at 180 plus miles per hour at times, I think was just badass. Very intense racing. Anytime anybody got side by side, I immediately was like, "Holy shit, they might wreck!" Oh my gosh! Like I immediately clenched my cheeks. Like anytime they'd get next to each other, because I was waiting for a wreck. And these IndyCar cars wreck hard too. These open wheel cars. We saw some big crashes in qualifying and practice. There were some wrecks early on in the race as well, and it was overall just a really good race. And Joseph Newgarden proved why he's one of the greatest of all time. Came out of nowhere near the end of that race and made a bunch of clutch passes. Ended up getting the victory, a hell of a victory for him. A great weekend for Penske, by the way, because Blaney was cheering on Newgarden on Saturday, and Newgarden was there in his Blaney shirt on Sunday. And Penske swept the Cup Series and the IndyCar Series, so that had to be a good day for Roger Penske and might make him want to do the Desert Double again. I think it was very successful, especially from the IndyCar standpoint. I saw the ratings this week. The Cup Series ratings went up like 1%, which isn't that from the average from last year. Went up 1%, so that's okay. It's not bad. But then for the IndyCar Series, they went up. They increased their viewership by over 50% from last year's race at this time because of the Phoenix Raceway race. They had over 1.5 million viewers for the IndyCar Series, and if IndyCar wants to do it again, it's going to happen because I think NASCAR wants to do these things. IndyCar are the ones that I think are like a little bit more iffy about it because it's a different crowd, different sort of tracks, a little bit different than what they're used to. And we mainly run ovals, they mainly run road courses. So I would expect the Desert Double to be back next year, them to do IndyCar and Cup Series, and maybe even see a couple more. I know we already have St. Pete with the trucks and IndyCar, but I can see IndyCar and the Cup Series maybe sharing Sonoma Raceway, a couple other tracks maybe on the schedule. That maybe Gateway. They tried it with Gateway a couple of years ago. Maybe they can try that again. They can do some interesting stuff with the IndyCar and Cup Series. They seem like they have a great relationship, and Fox is kind of making a lot of that stuff happen. So I got to give some credit to Fox on that. Tyler, how did you feel about your first IndyCar Series experience, and do you think the Desert Double should come back and maybe even get more of these IndyCar Series, Cup Series doubleheaders?
It was a great race. So I didn't really get too invested with the drivers or anything like that. I just kind of really
Yeah.
wanted to enjoy the race as a whole. So it turned out really well. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was fans were pretty, I mean, excited. The stands were pretty packed. I mean, for the most part, it seemed like it went over well. You had Rogers, I believe it was 60th anniversary party held down there
Yep.
at the Penske Museum down in Scottsdale Saturday night. So you know that was one hell of a party after them winning that IndyCar race and then following it up Sunday with that after party. So you know that's good to see. You know Roger wanted to get both of those cars in victory lane that day. It was big for him. Fox had a huge day with their involvement and their ownership with IndyCar. I mean, I think it's all pointing towards this being a good idea and them doing more races together. I don't see why Roger or Fox or anybody else would push against it. NASCAR brought viewership to them, and NASCAR could use some filler time and some filler races if we're not going to do practice. So might as well.
Yeah, I think it was a great move. I think it was a very successful weekend when it comes to the IndyCar Series part, and just an overall very successful weekend for Phoenix Raceway. There wasn't trucks there this weekend, which I always like to see the trucks out there, but I understand that they're not out there this weekend. They'll be in Phoenix later in the year. But overall, just a great weekend. We had a great O'Reilly Series race. The Indy cars really impressed, and the Cup Series race was a barn burner. Corey, how did you feel about this Desert Double?
That was my first ever IndyCar race, and I loved it. I mean, I had less expectations for what I was going to see, and I had an entertaining time. As a NASCAR diehard, I always prefer the NASCAR race, but the IndyCar race was just the speed was insane to see in person. I think that's what catches your eye the most. The speed, it almost doesn't look real with how they're racing. And that race mixed with the Xfinity or the O'Reilly race the same day is awesome. The whole day was amazing, and I mean, I hope they do it again.
Yeah, I sure hope they do it again. I think that would be pretty awesome. And like I said, I think we're going to see a couple more of these. I don't think we're going to see them like every other week, but I could see maybe 3 or 4 of these sort of weekends throughout the year. I think that would be, like I said, I think Gateway would be a good place for it. Sonoma. I'm just trying to think of tracks that are already on the IndyCar series schedule that they can maybe push together or something like that. Maybe they can add Chicagoland to the IndyCar schedule in 2027. That could be pretty cool. I think that would be pretty dope. I don't know if that would be too dangerous for them or not. Not sure, but we could see some. I think we could see some good double headers with the IndyCar series and the NASCAR Cup series, and most likely on the first half of the schedule because they have the relationship with Fox, and with both races going on Fox, they can co-promote. I don't know if I'll necessarily expect this happening like during the chase, during NBC's window. I don't think I would really expect to see this during the TNT window. Maybe during the Prime window because it seems like Prime are just willing to do more things. So maybe during the Prime window, I can see them. Maybe they can do. Maybe if they end up doing the Denver Street Course next year, or whatever street course they do next year, maybe that could be IndyCar and Cup Series on a street course. I think that would be pretty cool. That would get a lot of people in for that one. I think that would be pretty cool. That might be a good idea. But let us know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the Desert Double IndyCar Series, Cup Series in Phoenix?